everyone, it's Stephanie with Yarn Ball Handmade Goods. Welcome back to my channel, or if this is your first time watching, welcome. I'm Stephanie. Today's video is a really exciting one. I'm happy to share this information with you all. I know that when you're just starting to crochet, or even if you've been crocheting for a while, sometimes little problems can occur and you might be wondering, how can I just enhance my crochet? How can I level it up? And I want to share some tips to help you make your crochet look even better than I'm sure it already does. So let's get into it. Enhancement number one is yarn selection. Obviously, there are tons of different weights of yarns, different fibers. There's so many different options that it can be overwhelming. You might not really know where to start. It really all depends on what type of project you're looking to make. If you're looking to make something bigger, more bulky, definitely go for a chunkier, bulky yarn. If you're looking to make a sweater that's a little more lightweight, maybe do a light 3 or a size 4 worsted weight yarn. But either way, there's tons of different yarns, and I think these tips will help you navigate which one you should select. Now, when you have your project in mind, really think about, how do I want this to feel when it's done? If I'm making a blanket, do I want this blanket to be bulky and super cozy and warm? Do I want the blanket to be a little bit more lightweight or a medium weight? Those kinds of things are going to help narrow down what yarn you should be selecting and what'll be right for your specific project to get to the outcome that you want. So for me, I live in LA, so I do still love making cardigans and sweaters. However, it really doesn't get super cold here, so I don't really want to make a really chunky, thick sweater if I'm going to make one. I want to make one that's a little more lightweight and breathable. So with that being the case, I would select probably a lightweight 3 yarn or a size 4 worsted weight yarn. As you can see, the strands are just a little bit thinner, a little more lightweight. This one is a light 3, so you can see here, that's much more of like a thinner strand to work with. Whereas something like this is a little bit thicker, but still not too thick. This is a size 4, so this would also be a great option for a sweater. So basically, I wouldn't want to use like a bulky yarn or a chunky yarn because I don't want that to be the outcome. If you live somewhere really cold, or if you just love super chunky, thick like sweaters, then yeah, definitely go for something thicker if that's what you prefer. But really, the way you're going to select the best yarn for your project is to think of the end result and how you want it to look and how you want it to feel, and that's going to eventually help narrow down what yarn you should use. Now, if you're unsure what size a yarn is, just refer to the packaging. It's always going to be on the package for you. On this one, it says right here, size 4 medium. So you're always going to refer to that box. It'll have a little yarn skein and it'll have the weight of it right there. And something else you can do is just go to the yarn store, pick different yarns up, get familiar, look at the packaging, the sizes, feel them. That's really how I got familiar with what kinds of yarns I would want to use for what projects. Also, if you're doing a pattern, the pattern will always tell you what size of yarn to use. So that's kind of takes out the trial and error of it for you, is by following a pattern. But if you're just wanting to get familiar with selecting your own yarns and not having to rely on a pattern, then definitely just refer to the tags and the sleeves that are on the yarn. Sometimes it won't say exactly the weight, it won't have a 4 or a 3 or anything on it, but it should still at least say if it's worsted, and worsted will always be a 4. So again, here's another one right here. It's tiny, but it says light 3. This is a size 3 yarn, and that's how you know the strands are smaller. Basically, the higher the number and the weight, the chunkier the yarn. Again, here's another light 3. So basically that means that this skein of yarn, the strands are smaller than this one, because this is a size 4. So again, it really is just getting familiar with the yarn itself. Go to the craft store, just look around at the yarn, read the labels. The labels have tons and tons of information on them. So that leads me into enhancement number 2, which is selecting the right crochet hook size for your project. If you're totally lost with crochet hook sizes, you don't know which one to select, which one's going to give you the outcome that you want, always just refer to the yarn sleeve. It has all that information on there for you. It takes the guesswork out. And until you get familiar with what size you want to use without having to look, just refer to the package. It also goes for knitting needles as well. So it does have right under the weight of the yarn, it tells you what size knitting needles to use and what size crochet hook to use. So this one, it says 5 millimeter. You can see that right there. So that's something else that you can definitely refer to on the package. That doesn't mean you have to use a 5 millimeter. That's just the recommended size that this specific brand thinks goes best with this yarn weight and type. So just keep that in mind. At first, that's a great way to familiarize yourself with what hooks go best with what types of yarn and what weights, and also what projects. Also, a little bonus one is working with different fibers. Different fibers are better with certain projects, so just really keep that in mind. Again, if you're at the craft store, just feel different fibers, get familiar with them, think about how you want your project to feel when it's done, and if you find one that you really love, go with that. So of course, there's all different yarn hook sizes. So we have really tiny ones like this, which is a 3 millimeter, but obviously they get way smaller than this. So you have a 3 millimeter, and the biggest one I currently have right now is an 11.5 millimeter. So you can obviously see a massive difference here in sizing. So something like an 11.5 millimeter is going to be better for your chunkier blankets that you want to make. If you want to make a really chunky sweater or cardigan, you'll want to go with something like this. But of course, just watch out for what type of yarn you're using with it, because if you're using way too thin of a yarn, like a size 3 with 11.5 millimeter hook, your stitches are going to have a lot of gaps in them. But if that's what you're going for, try it. But that's kind of a huge size difference that might not work very well together. I would say if the yarn sleeve is saying it recommends a 4.5 millimeter crochet hook, then, you know, you do have some play with that. You could go to a 3.5, a 3, or even up to a 6 if you'd like, but you don't want to stray too far. Something like a 9 millimeter or an 11.5 millimeter might not give you the result that you want necessarily. It's going to have a lot of spaces and gaps in the stitches because the hook is just so big compared to the yarn strands. So again, just really refer to the packaging until you get comfortable and familiar with different hook sizes. It is good to try out every hook and just get familiar with the way that the stitches look with them and how your projects turn out with them. But again, you don't want to stray too far from what the packaging says, because it might not give you that result that you really want. But again, just get as many hooks as you can in all different sizes, and maybe get some fingering weight yarn, some DK, worsted weight, and really just play with them. Play with the different hook sizes and the different yarn sizes and find out how they look together and what you like. Also too, there are different types of hooks themselves. So we have this one that's more of an ergonomic type of a hook, so it's really catered to how you hold it. It's supposed to be more comfortable in the hand. It really depends on how you hold your hook though, if you hold it more like a fork almost, or if you hold it more like a pencil. I hold mine more like a pencil, so to me the ergonomic ones don't really do anything for me. I am just as comfortable using one like this that doesn't have any grip or anything on it, just a plain metal hook. That works well for me too. You have ones that are more plastic, and then some with wood grips, some with rubber grips. There's all different kinds of hooks. So again, buy a couple different kinds, play around with them. Crochet hooks are fairly cheap for the most part, so I would just say buy a few different kinds, see what feels best for you. You can return the ones you don't like or hold on to them. Maybe they'll come in handy for a different project, but really it's just all about finding what fits best in your specific hand and what goes the best with how you hold a crochet hook. So that leads into enhancement number 3, which is tension. Tension is absolutely so important when you're crocheting. If you really want to level up your projects, make them look more pro, the first thing you should be practicing is your tension. So let me give you an example. Okay, so I want to give you an example of tension and how it really makes a difference. So I want to get the camera a little bit lower here. So let's say I'm just going to take a few of these out. So as you can see, all of these stitches pretty much look exactly the same as far as the height of them, the width of them. They're all very even. So that's because I have mastered my tension. So basically your tension is how you hold your working yarn in your hand. So say I'm not really paying attention to my tension and my yarn just kind of dangling there. I don't really have any tension on it. I'm just sort of holding it, and I just kind of yarn over. It's sort of loose on the hook. I'm not really paying attention. I'm just kind of pulling the yarn through to make a stitch. And it's just sort of loose in my hand. Well, if that's the case, my stitches are going to look totally different than the rest. Like, look at that difference right there. These ones are very uniform, they're tighter, and these are kind of a mess. They're too big, they are loose, the strands are kind of coming out, and that's because I did not have enough tension. It was way too loose. So on the other end of that is you can have way too tight of a tension, and you could be holding this too tight and like yarning over really tight, and your stitches are going to look really close together. It's going to be hard to get your hook through the yarn, and that's also the other end of things that you want to stay away from that, because basically the inconsistency in tension is going to make my project look way less professional and not done as well. So you can see here, these stitches are way too tight, and they just don't look right compared to these ones that are all very nice and uniform and have an even balanced tension. So a way that you can really practice your tension is, when I first started, I would wrap my yarn around my pinky and then kind of run it through my fingers, and that helped make sure that the tension stayed even. And then you can use your first finger to hold the yarn. You can see you have some tension in the yarn between your hook and your finger. So that's a great way to get familiar with having the right amount of tension, and you'll be able to feel it on your finger when you start doing it. So if your yarn is looking like this, you can tell it's way too loose of a tension. If it's too pulled out like that, it's way too tight of a tension. You want it nice and in between and balanced. It should be straight but not tugging this way. It should be straight but not falling forward like this. Just keep your finger nice and strong and up, and that will help you get familiar with having a nice, even, balanced tension. And then your stitches will come out beautifully, and they will all start to look the same. So that looks much better. So while my camera is down here, I'm actually going to go into enhancement number 4, which is weaving in your ends and having an invisible seam. This is really going to help your project level up, because it's going to help the finish look great, and it's going to make it look nice and seamless. So when we get to this point where we're on our final stitch of the round and we're ready to go ahead and fasten off and weave in our ends, we're going to do our final slip stitch, and then we will fasten off. And now comes time to weave in our ends. So you'll pull your yarn through. And I like doing the invisible seam method because it makes everything look nice and seamless. If you don't do an invisible seam and you're just kind of going through here however, you're going to have this weird bump. It's not going to look right, and it's not going to be nice and straight and even. So you really want to pay attention to how you are weaving your ends in to finish your project so that it looks as professional as possible. So a way to do that is to do the invisible seam. So what you do for the invisible seam is you'll skip the next stitch, go into the one after that, go through both loops, pull through, and then you're going to go back into the stitch that you started from, just through the back loop. And that's going to create a absolutely beautiful invisible seam. It looks nice and even. You can't even tell where it ended and where it started, honestly, because there's no weird lump. The stitches just keep flowing and it looks great. So it's a beautiful way to finish your project. So then we go to weaving in the ends on the back. So you do have a couple different options. So you want to just make sure that you're hiding everything really well. So just kind of weave through the different strands here. and you can just go through the different strands and keep tucking it in however you would like. Another thing that I like to do is, if the option is there, so I have this other strand to weave in, instead of weaving that in, I'll bring the one strand back over towards the second strand, and this kind of saves some time with weaving ends in. I'll just tie a little knot here, maybe twice, just to make sure it's good. And then we'll just cut the yarn off as close as possible to the knot. And see, you can barely see that. And our ends are weaved in beautifully. We have a nice invisible seam here. It looks nice and even. And our project looks even more pro. The back looks beautiful. There's no ends sticking out, no frays or anything coming through. So knotting is a great way to finish off a project when weaving in your ends, if the option is there. If the option's not there, then just going back and forth through the different strands of yarn in the back is great, and then just cutting the end off as close as possible, and then it'll also come out beautifully as well. So the fifth and final enhancement to your crochet projects would be blocking. So there's a few different ways to block your projects, and that really all just depends on the type of yarn that you are using. So I always look for the washing instructions on the sleeve. I'm somebody that really loves to be able to just throw what I make in the washer and dryer, and honestly that blocks the project for me, and it comes out way looser and relaxed and flowy, and it fits better. I've done that with so many different sweaters and cardigans, and it just transforms the whole thing, totally loosens it up. I have a few different before and after reels on my Instagram that you can check out, and the difference is just crazy. So blocking, I highly recommend. It's gonna totally transform your project. It's gonna take it from being kind of stiff and tight stitches to just totally loose and flowy and comfortable. So again, I always refer to the package. There's so much good information on these sleeves. So right here, you could see, it says machine washable and dryable. So I know when I'm done making my sweater with this yarn, I can throw it in the laundry, put it on a delicate cycle, I can dry it afterwards, and it's gonna block it for me and come out beautifully. However, something like this, that's a superwash merino wool. It says on here, machine washable, cold water, gentle cycle, so you want to do that one on delicate for sure, and then do not tumble dry. You want to flat dry it. So you can wash it in cold water, but then you cannot run it through the drying machine. You have to take it out and either hang it up on a hanger or lay it flat on a board, and you can use the little, I think they're like quilter pins, and you can stretch it out, and then that'll really help to block it as well. There are some other yarns that are really fine that I don't have the tag for this one, but I'm obsessed with this yarn. It's one of my favorites that I ever bought. I'm still waiting to figure out what to make with it. But a yarn like this, I know that when I bought it, I read the tag and it does say do not run through the washer or the dryer. So in that case, you will have to do the method of blocking your items in the bathtub or a sink or a bucket or a bowl. So with that, you'll just want to fill it up with some cool water, and you'll basically just wash it in the bowl like the old days. And then you can't dry it in the dryer as well. You have to either hang it up or lay it flat and stretch it out with some quilter's pins, and then you'll get that same beautiful result as you would if you ran it through the washer and dryer. But again, you just have to really pay attention to what kind of fiber it is, what the tag says, if it is machine washable and dryable. But regardless, whether you block your item in the bathtub and then lay it flat to dry, or you run it through the washer and dryer, just block your item after. I'm telling you, it's gonna make the absolute world's a difference. When I was enlightened by blocking and realized that was a thing, I couldn't believe how much it transformed my project. It was crazy. So again, let's just run through real quick those 5 tips for enhancing your crochet projects. The first one is yarn selection. So just really paying attention to what size yarn you are selecting for your specific project. That's really going to help make all the difference in the world. Number 2 is selecting the correct crochet hook for your specific project and for how you hold your crochet hook. So just try different ones out, see which one feels best in your hand and your grip. Refer to the sleeves, guys, when you are unsure of what hook to use. It'll always guide you in the right direction, and then once you have more experience, you'll be more comfortable selecting the right hook on your own. Number 3 is how to keep consistent tension. Just practice, practice, practice. It's so important. It makes all the difference in your project. And just pay attention to how your stitches look. If they look nice and even, you know that your tension is balanced. It's not too tight or too loose, so just keep practicing. Then we have number 4, which is weaving in your ends and doing an invisible seam. It really makes all the difference. You can't even tell where I started and stopped the project here. And the back looks nice and neat as well because we weaved in our ends nice and clean. And then number 5, blocking. Learn how to block your project. If you can run it through the washer and dryer, do that once your project's done, or wash it in the bathtub, lay it flat to dry, hang it up on a hanger. It's gonna make the world of difference, and you're gonna fall more in love with your crochet projects and really see how it levels it up. And those are my top 5 tips on how to level up and enhance your crochet projects. I really hope that this was informative for you and helps you in the future, and I hope it inspired you to get creating and try new things and just have fun with crocheting. That's what it's all about. I hope you guys all had a wonderful Thanksgiving and a great weekend, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.